This video is about using variables and writing the variables for the academic task 1. It is the second of the micro skills that you need to learn in order to produce a very high standard and high scoring task 1. So I'm going to talk about what variables are. We'll break them down and understand exactly how to write them out. And then I'm going to talk about writing them in your own language. So let's consider the first question: what are variables? So here's an example of a trend sentence, and we looked at this in the Micro Skill 1 video. The number of people who own more than one car increased steadily from 25% to 37% between 2007 and 2011. So if you remember when I was talking about trends, we had variable, trend, data, and time. So of course in this one you can see in orange the variable is written, the number of people who own more than one car. And then you've got your trend increased steadily, your data from 25% to 37%. And then the time between 2007 and 2011. So we're going to look at this variable in more detail. Now, where can you find these variables? They are shown in the task 1 description when you read the data shows blah, 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 blah. It might be the variable of the X or Y axis in a line graph. It might be pieces of a pie chart, that could be a variable, or the sections of a bar chart, or the columns of a table. They can be defined as variables. Let's just look at a few more examples. So just so you get the idea, you've got things like the number of tourists who visited Bali, the amount of men who were married, the percentage of companies that paid tax, and the amount of ice creams sold. So I want to break these variables down into more detail now, because you can see how they come together. Basically, there are 4 components. And you begin with the, then you have your quantity word, the number, the amount, the quantity, the percentage, the proportion, the level, the degree, the frequency. And then you have your preposition of. Okay, and then after that, as you can see coming up now, we have the actual description part. Okay, so you've got, for example, the percentage of companies that paid tax, the level of pollution produced by factories. Now, at the beginning, you definitely have to write out this variable in full, because it is important that the reader understands what line or what bar or what column you are talking about. Now, it is also important to rephrase the variables, and what I mean by that is write them in a different way. Now, the reason for this is because it avoids repetition. If you're always talking about the percentage of sales, the percentage of sales, the percentage of sales, the percentage of sales, then of course your answer gets a bit boring and will get a lower score. Also, notice that the variables are written in the question, they are given to you. So if you just use what is written in the question, basically you are copying. Now, you can copy, but it's not going to give you any extra points. So if you rephrase the variables, then you're going to increase your chances of getting a better score, rather than just copying what you are already given. Linked to this, the reason you'll get a better score if you can rephrase them is that it shows you can use the language flexibly. So there are basically two methods to rephrasing the variables. Number one is to adjust the grammar, and number two is to use different vocabulary. So we're going to look at these one by one. And of course, let's begin by adjusting the grammar. So if you look, really the grammar, there's not that much flexibility, but if we look at these examples, the number of tourists who visited Bali, the percentage of men who were married, the amount of companies that paid tax, you can see that there's a pattern. You've got your number of tourists, and then you have your relative pronoun who, and then you have the verb visited, who were married, that paid tax. And what you can do is you can use the ing form. So you can write here the number of tourists visiting Bali, the percentage of married men, and the number of companies paying tax. So with changing the grammar, it's really only possible when you have this kind of structure with who, and then you can change it into the ing forms there, as I've shown you in the examples. The other thing you can do is to change the vocabulary. So once again, let's take these examples. And what you need to do is you need to look at some of the key words and see if you can think of alternative vocabulary for those words. So if I show you the examples here, with the number of tourists who visited Bali, tourists can be holiday makers. Visit can be changed to coming to. With the percentage of men who are married, then you can change percentage to proportion. You can use spouses with spouses instead of who were married. And finally, the amount of companies that paid tax is you can change the amount to the number, and paying tax can be changed to submitting tax reports. Of course, doing this you will need some vocabulary power in order to do so, but it's quite a good way of showing that you are flexible in using your English, and this will help to improve your score. Okay, so that's really the main points I would like to say about variables. However, in the next video, when we talk about comparisons, you will see how using variables accurately is important. So have a look at the next video, and you can develop your skills from there.